Hey guys, back with you for a review of Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 6. It is called Scavenger. So this episode is better. I enjoyed this one more than 5. A step back up, even though it's not as good as some of the earlier episodes in the season. There's good and bad, but overall, I'd say I quite enjoyed this one. It was cool having Giorgio and Michael together on a mission. Um, because what basically happens is, again, Michael, the Discovery crew are back together and they have all this cool little technology. You sort of see them enjoying that and, enjoying being back on the ship and stuff. It's just that they're assigned, missions by this admiral of this Starfleet. And so that's all quite fun. They're enjoying their snazzy new technology in this future, and there's this sort of ongoing joke with one of the crew who's I can't remember the character's name, but this alien who's he just can't get a handle on the sort of beamer that he's got that beams you to different parts of the ship, and so he keeps showing up at the wrong location and just cursing his sort of luck. And there's sort of a laugh between the crew because that's kind of yeah, that's him, that's typical him. So I think the way it gets across that sense of family and banter with this crew is good stuff, because that's obviously one of the core themes about Star Trek. But so I quite like the stuff with the Discovery crew in this, and as I said, having Michael and Giorgio together on a mission is great because basically Michael gets a cryptic message from Book, contacted by him via his cat Grudge, who's absolutely great. I absolutely love Grudge, but he uses sort of the form of Grudge to send her the message. It's kind of bizarre. And then there's stuff when Grudge is left for the crew of Tilly in particular to find. And there's some nice little Tilly scenes with her saying, well, I'm actually more of a dog person, I'm not so keen on cats, and her reaction to the cat when the cat goes under the bed and stuff, and Tilly's trying to get a hold of it, try and find it. So I enjoyed those scenes. Grudge is quite a character, but as I was saying, Michael gets this cryptid message from Book, and it's all to do with the burn. It's all to do with this black box, which apparently can unlock the answers to what happened with the burn. And Michael wants to go on a mission, and again, similar to last week, we get this sort of tension between her and Saru, and then her and this Admiral character, because Michael wants to be Michael. She wants to go off and do her own thing, and she sees the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is finding out what happened with the burn, what exactly caused it, and why exactly things are the way they are. And that's the bigger picture, and she doesn't really care what she has to do that. Whereas with Starfleet and this Admiral, it's more very by the book. Don't go outside the box, I'm in charge. And I sort of wonder if maybe there's a resistance to finding out more about the burn from this Admiral, because I don't know if there's going to be some sort of twist with him, or whether he's behind it somehow, or if he has inside information or some sort of politics. But it might just be that thing of this is Starfleet protocol. Of course, the burn, I mean, it's meant to be in the past, quite sort of distant sort of past. So I guess maybe it's that sense of we're moving on now. That was then, this is now sort of thing. Although it did cause a tremendous amount of damage to the universe and did change things. But as I say, Michael gets this cryptic message to try and find this black box. So in order to move forward with that, she has to go to this planet where Book is actually now being held as a slave. He's like working, and it's him and these other like slaves, and there's a particular like species, like life form, that Book actually becomes friends with, and that becomes a big emotive part of the episode, because at one point his life is in danger and stuff. So that's kind of the main plot of the episode. And again, Saru, because the Starfleet Admiral has kind of said, no, we're going to focus on our mission, basically. And there's not enough to justify this sort of risk going off on this other mission. And Saru kind of backs him up, because his whole thing is, well, we've got to play ball for the time being to ultimately maybe get what we want and move forward. You know, you make peace, you make relations with the setup, and slowly you make progress and move forward, which to a certain extent he's been proven right, just because they have got obviously their shit back and everything, and the Admiral has started seeing the value in them more. But there's other sides to the issue. I sort of like that dynamic and that sort of that contrast in the styles of Saru and Michael, and that kind of tension. I have to say the Admiral of the Starfleet is still very one note for me, still very bland. There's not a lot of interest to him or his personality. I think there just could be a bit more. I mean, if the idea is that he's hiding something, or even that he's just this very by the book, I don't know, kind of malicious sort of guy, or just someone who's just like ridiculously by the book and mundane and very sort of, set in his ways. And I think at least maybe he could have a bit more to him, a bit more of a character or personality, but it may still come out. But again, I sort of found some of his scenes quite plodding in this episode. But what I'm building up to is that ultimately Michael and Giorgio go on this mission, and they go off the books, and this is right up Giorgio's alley. And I think this is why Michael went to her and chose her, because hey, she knew that she would back her up, whereas potentially any other member of the crew might have had hesitations, might have questions it, because Giorgio kind of says, well, you had me at off the books, or off schedule mission, or however she phrased it. And I think that's one of the great things about the Michael Giorgio relationship, is the fact that they disagree on almost like 90% of things, and that they've been like adversaries. But when it comes to such things, they just connect, because they are both renegades. They both like to do things off the book and take risks. So that's something that brings them together in this episode. But at the same time, there is this sort of distrust between them, because Giorgio brings up the past at some point, and it becomes this thing where, well, could I trust you in the past? And so I like that as well, the fact that Giorgio keeps him on his guard, or Michael on her guard. And so they do the mission, and they eventually save like these slaves, although there's a lot of tension. At one point, as I said, Book's character, his friend, gets like critically sort of injured, and they have to like beam him aboard. And it's a close call. I have to say, this is another character who maybe we're not that in. We only meet him in this episode, but I guess we sort of like Book enough, and we know enough about Book to actually sort of care about this other character. But it's just one of those things, just like an added sort of stake for tension. But that stuff I think is quite well done, although it is obviously another plot where they go to another planet and there's another. They have to jump through hoops. They have to put on a certain sort of like face or certain sort of scheme, because basically the strategy is that they pretend to be like these sort of like pirates sort of thing who have taken over like the place, and they pretend to be on that side, and they sort of use like the whole leverage of like having delirium, and Giorgio is like the face of that, so that's kind of perfect. And the act is that Michael is like actually one of her sort of slaves, and they use that to get on the inside. I have to say that there is like this ridiculous looking alien who's like running the whole factory, and he does look kind of like a cross between like Spock and some sort of like stereotypical like Martian, or sort of a green alien. And I don't know, he wasn't quite doing it for me. He didn't really have a lot of presence, and he felt like a one-note villain. He felt like a one-off sort of, let's just for this episode sort of villain, rather than having any sort of presence or anything that interesting. And I think just because it had that sort of like cross, it felt like a bit of a grab bag, part Spock, part, like sort of little green man, or big green man in a way, since he's like an actual life size. But and that's he wasn't that great, but I guess it served a purpose. And overall the mission on the planet and the tension there was quite good. We get a little bit more with Adira and her imaginary, her boyfriend from the past, and he's now with her, he's a presence. We get a bit more of him. I'm not so keen on that plot. I thought that served its purpose in the previous episode. I'm not really into them doing that kind of plot, but we'll see where it goes. There's a nice little scene with like Stance where Adiro like mentions it, and that's all sort of, hi, I'll be ready in a minute, and that's a thing there with them that sort of rounds that up. And we'll see where that go. I wasn't so keen on what's happening with that necessarily, but yeah, there's a moment with Stance where he actually says, I kind of believe at least that you believe, then he's there and the presence is there. But that's so it works in that sort of way. But okay, that's the episode basically. That's Star Trek Discovery for the week. And I'll be back at a similar time next week with next week's episode. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. How are you liking this third season? And like and subscribe, all that sort of stuff. And I'll see you guys again soon. Okay, goodbye.